Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Hope you're having a beautiful day today. It is a Friday morning, Friday as I like to call it. It's August 21st, 2026, and we have, as always, as we always try to do for you, our wonderful listeners, a great and a very informative show, especially if you're a parent, a grandparent, or anyone who loves babies and cares about kids. A lot about families this morning and children and the impact of media. We've got a jam-packed show for you. So we will go through the rundown right now. Out of the gate, of course, it's a Friday. So first of all, we always have Peter Gagnon, our head of EWTN Studios. So he gives us a look at what's coming up in the next week or so you can jot it down and not miss a thing of our wonderful programming. So we will talk with Peter at about 15 minutes past the hour, as we always do on a Friday. And then for Fact Check Friday, I want to take a look at some of the statements from the whistleblowers in this latest Meta case. This is a huge trial that continues in Los Angeles, or that area of the country, actually maybe a little bit north. And they're saying it could last several weeks, possibly as long as 5 to 7 weeks. And what's being revealed is probably no surprise, but of course you've got Meta denying it all, which actually I don't know how they can defend that based on the evidence of addictive behavior of children and how problematic it is. But there are some very powerful statements given by this whistleblower. So we'll share those with you and just talk a little bit about media. And speaking of media, Maria Scaperlanda is going to be with us. She is going to be talking about the cause for canonization for Blessed Stanley Rother. She's a promoter of the cause, and she also is an award-winning author and journalist. Her books have explored the lives of the saints, including her book, The Shepherd Who Didn't Run, Blessed Stanley Rother, the Martyr from Oklahoma. So that will be a very enlightening, I think, uplifting conversation. Hour number 2, in 2 cents, we're going to feature a portion of a video, the audio obviously, because this is radio theater of the mind, as they say. Our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom have produced a very important series on what's happening with the gender ideology in schools. And being that we're talking about back to school a lot right now, because many young families have kids that are back to school or will be going back to school very soon, a lot of folks after Labor Day, of course, we thought it would be important to share this series with you because it's so helpful for parents. It really is. And all of us who want to know more about what's happening. And very similar to what Kelly Solomon has shared with us from the Cardinal Newman Society about the agenda in many of these public school systems and other schools, unfortunately, as well. So we'll share a portion of the first edition of this very important series that our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom are giving us. Now, before we talk with Alliance Defending Freedom in hour number 2 on EWTN Radio Extra, speaking of parenting, the one, the only Dr. Meg Meeker is back with us. I'm so excited to catch up with Meg. We'll be talking about back to school and staying in the Catholic faith. She's a pediatrician, the author of multiple books, and she's widely recognized, I'm sure you're aware of this in her name, as one of the nation's leading authorities on parenting, teens, and children's health. She's also the founder of Strong Parent Project, a unique online learning community to equip and encourage parents. And then after Meg joins us, we will have Kate Anderson with us for the final portion of hour number 2, and she will give us more detail about the 5-part video series, Stand Firm in the Truth About Gender. As I said, a busy show this morning, but a lot of great information for you, especially if you're a parent or a grandparent or just concerned about families and kids in general, and I know we all are. Weather-wise, we had some storms that were moving through the East Coast that caused some real problems yesterday. So right now we have scattered severe thunderstorms and excessive rainfall still possible into this evening in the Mid-Atlantic, and heavy rain will shift to the Virginia and Carolinas today. We have severe storms also possible, the National Weather Service says, in the Central Plains into the upper Mississippi Valley and the Deep South this evening. And then dangerous heat is persisting across the Southern Plains and the lower Mississippi Valley, and that heat will expand into the Southwest for the weekend. Already 4 minutes past the hour. We have a lot of news to get through for you this morning. It is a Friday. It's August 21st. Let's get started with the news here on a Friday morning on EWTN. Well, Vatican News is reporting, addressing the International Catholic Legislators Network. The Holy Father is urging legislation that protects human rights and human dignity, warning that artificial intelligence must never be allowed to erode the family, the first school of humanity. The Holy Father is saying at the Vatican today, sound legislation should encourage scientific and technological creativity while safeguarding fundamental human rights and freedoms. It should protect users from exploitation, preserve personal privacy, ensure transparency in the use of emerging technologies, and guarantee they strengthen democratic institutions. He observed that such oversight can operate at multiple levels, local, national, and international, facilitating open discussion of the ethical frameworks involved and subjecting them to shared standards of social justice, ensuring that no single ideology of interest dictates the values embedded in those systems. At the same time, the Holy Father underscoring the rapid development of artificial intelligence risk, creating new forms of technological dependence, with poorer nations increasingly reliant on wealthier ones. He said against this culture of power, the Church proposes a civilization of love, saying in such a society, the first school of humanity would be the family. He said, for it is within the family that we first learn trust before calculation, generosity before competition, dialogue before division, and love before power. And with an increasing number of abortions done by way of sending pills through the mail, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is urging Catholics across the nation to pray to St. Joseph, as Isabella Di Carvalho reports, to stop the spread of abortion pills.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Pro-Life Activities is inviting Catholics to join a focused effort of prayer and action against the spread of abortion pills, starting on August 18th and lasting until October. Every abortion involves the death of a child and harm to the mother. Now, with easier access to abortion pills, the abortion rate is tragically climbing, along with increased health risks, said Archbishop Paul Coakley, USCCB President, and Bishop Daniel Thomas, Chairman of the conference's Pro-Life Committee, in a joint invitation released on August 18th. The invitation includes a prayer in English and Spanish that can be said for the intercession of St. Joseph, Defender of Life. It also encourages Catholics to visit the USCCB's Respect Life Prayer and Action website, where they can learn about the danger of abortion pills and send messages to pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies that are involved. The initiative was launched in order to overlap with the Respect Life Month, which is observed every October by the Catholic Church in the United States.
The bishops who oversee the Shrine of Our Lady of Lourdes in France saying the popular Catholic pilgrimage site will cover all of its mosaics by disgraced priest Father Marco Rupnik ahead of the Holy Father's visit there next month. The Lourdes bishop, as EWTN News tells us, speaking to local media in Lourdes, that all of the works on the facade of the Basilica of the Rosary will be covered and redecorated out of respect for abuse victims. He also said they will remain covered going forward. EWTN News also confirming the report with the press office of the shrine. Details about how the mosaics are to be covered and when are not available at this time. The decision to cover those mosaics comes just over a month before Pope Leo's set visit to France, which will include a stop at the popular Marian apparition site in Lourdes, and that will happen September 26th through the 27th. The visibility of the mosaics by Rupnik, an accused sex abuser currently undergoing a Vatican trial, risks becoming the literal backdrop of Leo's Rosary procession and other events in Lourdes. The topic of sexual abuse and care for victims is likely to come up in the Pope's meeting with French bishops. That'll happen on September 27th, though the Holy Father is not expected to address the status of Rupnik's case. The Vatican also saying today that Pope Leo will meet privately with victims of abuse sometime during the France trip. Covering all of Rupnik's mosaics is the Lourdes bishop's most dramatic step yet with regard to the artworks by the priest artist. Those mosaics were added to the facade of the Lower Lourdes Basilica at the end of 2007. Rupnik has been accused of spiritual, psychological, and sexual abuse of religious sisters. He was removed from the Jesuits back in 2023 and is currently facing a canonical trial at the Vatican's Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith over the allegations that he abused dozens of women religious, including some within the context of the creation of his art. In other news this morning, the FBI saying a female ISIS supporter was planning to attack New York's Capitol building in Albany. FBI Special Agent Craig Tremoroli says 35-year-old Jessica Bowie wanted to blow up the building and kill lawmakers working inside.
She said, quote, I want to destroy as much of the building as possible and kill the senators while they are meeting. I want them to lose a lot of important documents as well.
The special agent also saying Bowie praised the September 11th attacks.
Also in the court documents, she told the source that she went from a little girl waving an American flag after 9/11 to now having stickers of the fallen towers. Folks, let that sink in.
She also allegedly discussed her plans with FBI informants and spent weeks surveilling the state capitol. Tremaroli also said she praised again the attacks and was planning future terrorist attacks. She was arrested yesterday and charged her attempting to provide material support to ISIS. The FBI called her attempts an attack on democracy. Tammy Trujillo tells us a major polling tracker is suspending its use of information from a pollster after discovering evidence of firm allegedly falsified information.
The survey in question from the Public Sentiment Institute was on the candidates in Florida's gubernatorial Republican primary race. This after another shocking announcement from the fake polling center Median Strategies, which admitted to spreading false data as a social experiment. 50+1 announced it was permanently banning data from the firm, which appeared to boost poll numbers of the candidate that paid for the poll. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Testimony resuming today in the Lindsay Clancy murder trial. Yesterday, defense heard testimony from a Massachusetts hospital chaplain who met with Clancy on the day after she killed her 3 young children back in 2023. She said Clancy told her she heard a voice in her head commanding her to harm her children. The jury was dismissed after hearing from the chaplain, with the judge saying it will be a longer day tomorrow. An expert on postpartum psychosis will testify for the defense, and prosecutors will call 3 rebuttal witnesses. Closing arguments are expected sometime next week. Natalie Rodriguez tells us an ICE deportation flight originated from Alexandria, Louisiana, with a brief Miami layover has officially now landed in northern Haiti.
The charter with 161 Haitian nationals arrived in the northern city of Cap-Haïtien, bypassing the capital due to rampant gang warfare following the termination of temporary protected status. Amid an immigration scramble in South Florida, legal defense groups in Little Haiti report that arriving migrants do face heavy gang violence, while local families are facing sudden ICE check-ins and a reported expansion of electronic tracking monitors. Natalie Rodriguez, Miami.
2 fishermen rescued after they were found floating in a cooler off the coast of Mexico. The Mexican Navy is saying they found the men Wednesday about 150 miles off the coast, where they had been floating in the Pacific in a large fishing cooler with no food or water for at least 5 days. The Navy said they were airlifted to Mexico, where they received medical attention before being reunited with their families. It's not clear at this point how the men became stranded. A video of the rescue shows 2 men in a large blue box on the ocean waves, bobbing on the ocean waves as the rescue boat moves in. An Arizona State University business professor says information from after-school sales can paint a picture on how holiday shopping will turn out. Hitendra Chattadure says he looks at how much retailers buy next month.
In September, if the retailers decide to order with energy, enthusiasm, then we are going to see a very good Christmas.
On the other hand, he says if businesses are holding back, well, that's a different story. More stories for you coming up, especially what we will be airing the next week or so on EWTN. Peter Gagnon, head of EWTN Studios, up next on a Friday. "15 minutes past the hour." We use this Friday morning segment at 9:15 Eastern Time on EWTN's Catholic Connection to keep you connected to all the great programming we have, featuring our head of EWTN Studios, Peter Gagnon, and never a dull moment, always so much going on. And I think we're starting with the Holy Father's visit to San Marino. Good morning.
Good morning, Teresa. It's great to be with you.
Same here.
Yeah, we're kicking that off. Tomorrow, the Holy Father's he's doing a one-day trip. And but he's good. The Holy Father always covers a lot of events, and even a one-day trip. So very interesting because it's its own republic independent within Europe. Within Italy, and but it's really a whole. The day's lineup starts at 4:30 a.m. Eastern, goes all the way through 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So there's a number of events. You know, he meets with the Captain Regent. There's adoration of the Blessed Sacrament and veneration of the relics of Saint Marinus, who kind of founded that town, that country. And then Pope Leo is going to encounter people, encounter of young people and others in the region for a meeting of friendship among peoples. It's going to be in a children's village. He's going to be meeting with the sick and the disabled, and then it's going to end with a mass in Rimini. So I would say the best thing to do is go to EWTN.com, go to the schedule and look at the website, because, you know, like I say, it starts at 4:30 a.m. with the meetings and then ends with the mass at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Or encores later at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. It's the best time for people to see. So another program I want to talk about is, you know, we have so many beautiful witnesses in the United States of people who have truly lived out their faith. And a lot of times we only think of the saints and the blesseds and the venerables internationally, but, you know, with Archbishop Fulton Sheen being beatified next month, it brings to mind those in the United States. So a program we have airing tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern is called The Five Priests. And this is the story of five priests in Shreveport, Louisiana, who in 1873, there was an epidemic of yellow fever, and it swept through that area. And these priests tended the sick and the dying, and they eventually succumbed to the disease themselves. So it's their story, and they're servants of God, and their cause is ongoing. So the five priests that airs tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, and just a great witness of those living heroic lives. Another program to look at is a film on St. Rose of Lima. So that is in our cinema slot, which is Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. And this is an original feature film that EWTN produced, and the story of St. Rose and the hardships and independence she lived, and just another incredible example of living a life of holiness.
So that's tomorrow at 8. I'm just making some notes
tomorrow
here.
At 8 p.m.
Okay.
Eastern, yeah. And then let's shift to Sunday. We have a program on Sunday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And for those who enjoy music, this is a program on Gregorian chant.
Ooh.
It's Gregorian chant, the music of the angels, and it's Cistercian monks, and they share both insights and their talents in this documentary, and it's kind of tracing Gregorian chant's history from Pope Gregory to the present day. So tune into that. It's really a beautiful film with some incredible chanting in that program. And speaking of Pope Leo, our Vaticano special this week. So Vaticano is our program produced out of our Vatican office, and this will air Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. But they're looking at Saint Augustine and his connection with Pope Leo. So Pope Leo, who's the first member of the Order of Saint Augustine, you know, to be elected Pope, and so and he chose his motto, you know, in the one Christ we are one. Which is directly adapted from a sermon by St. Augustine. So it's a look at St. Augustine, but through the lens of Pope Leo. So that's a great program to check out. And then I know you're having Maria Scaperlanda to talk about Father Stanley Rother in the new. So they have a new documentary coming out, which people should go see. It's coming out to theaters at the end of this month. And we have a documentary that we did on Father Stanley Rother as well, called Father Stanley Rother, American Martyr, that was done with Father Charles Connor. And, you know, it's kind of a not as deep introduction to his life, but people can check that out. It airs Monday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And then definitely go check out the new documentary that's coming out that the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City put out on Stanley Rother's life. An incredible witness, and his story of martyrdom in Guatemala is fantastic. And EWTN actually is in the midst of creating a feature film on his life. So you should check out the documentary so you can learn more about him. So when our feature film comes out next summer, you'll be able to see a truly stunning witness on that.
That's what I was going to ask you. When will our film be released? Next summer, you said?
Yeah, ours is next summer, correct. Yeah, and it's really, I've seen kind of all the production on it. It's really going to be pretty amazing when that comes out. Finally, people should learn more about the Crusades, because a lot of times the Crusades, are in the secular world are really misrepresented, right? So we have a mini series that we did on them, and that'll air beginning Monday in our gallery strip, so Monday through Friday. And it's a production film throughout the Holy Land and Europe, and it shows a lot of dramatic recreations and insights from leading historians, which clears up the myth and the misinformation that's arisen about the Crusades. So Monday through Friday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, tune into the Crusades and learn more about it. And so you can learn to defend the truths of it when people ask you about it.
Yeah. I want to get back to Oh, go ahead, finish. I said a question. Go ahead.
That I think that's kind of most of the highlights we have for this coming week.
In doing different film productions, how do you? There's so much out there, and I know we cover such a wide variety. I mean, just the last 6 minutes, all the different types of programming that we have. But how do you decide, as the head of EWTN Studios, okay, this is a good idea, and we're going to do this? Because there must be people approaching you all the time to do different projects.
We get approached so often, and we have, even over the last couple of years, we've literally had hundreds of pitches since we announced our EWTN Next initiative and building up of EWTN Studios. So we do have a discernment process, and we actually have a team that reviews it, and we have different markers we look at. Does it align with EWTN's mission? Is it a story that's going to be inspiring? Is it family viewing? Not everything is going to be for kids, like Stanley Rother's film. He was martyred, so there's a dark part of that. Yeah. But it could be a good film for parents and teens to look at together and have discussions about. Then we also want to look at the quality. Those we're going to be working with this, are they able to produce a really high quality production? Because the secular world is doing really beautiful things with an awful message. So we want to be able to match them in the excellency in what we're trying to produce. And then we have to look at the cost. Can we do this in a way that, because these programs cost a lot of money to do, but we can't, EWTN's not going to be doing a $20 million film, right? It's just the reality of things. We'd love to, but that's just the reality of where we are. But so we have to be prudent and do things in a cost-effective way, but never compromising quality for that. In the story, the story should be, inspirational and really hit folks in a way that really the message is clear, to help people really live out their faith in a deeper way through all the programs that we try to put out there.
Yeah, the production value is so high. I mean, all the different Learn series that you do too, EWTN Learn series, those are available online, but they're so beautifully produced. They really are.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. We have incredibly talented folks working at EWTN, and over the last few years, we've really built up that level of talent. And also, and where the beautiful part also is, people who have approached us are incredibly talented folks. We just did a initiative in association with the Napa Institute, and where we had a film contest, and these up and coming filmmakers pitched their projects there, and EWTN was a co-sponsor with that, and so we provide a little bit of funding and they're going to be able to platform on EWTN. But hearing these younger producers and directors and really talented folks who want to do this and bring the faith to their work is amazing. So it's really uplifting to know that's happening.
Great stuff, Peter. Thank you so much. Peter Gagnon, head of EWTN Studios. Just a little snippet of all the great programming coming up in the next several days, and so much hard work goes into all these productions. So we thank you for your support. Peter, thanks. Have a great weekend. We'll be right back. .27 past the hour. Thanks so much for tuning in on a Friday morning edition of EWTN's Catholic Connection. Just a reminder in terms of what's coming up, if you didn't get a chance to write it down. I always try to take notes during our segment with Peter, speaking of Fact Check Friday and media. So at 2 p.m. Eastern, and I believe that is today, we're going to hear about 5 saints who died during a plague in Louisiana in the 1800s. A very beautiful story. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., St. Rose of Lima, a special film. Sunday at 1:30. I love Gregorian chant. I don't know about you, but I just find it so beautiful and so peaceful. There's a special again at Sunday, 1:30 p.m., all about Gregorian chant. And then also there is a special on the Crusades and also a special Monday morning on Stanley Rother. So all kinds of great stuff. And you can always re-listen to the show if you weren't available to take notes, or just go to EWTN.com for all the information. All of it will be up there. Wanted to give you some more background and some information about this major trial that's going on in Oakland, California. And it is against the social media giant Meta. And they're calling it the Meta Social Media Addiction Trial. Let me give you some background on why it's important. Many children are back in school now, as we mentioned. Some are heading to school. And this problem, the Holy Father even talked about it in his message today regarding AI. Of course, this is all part of it in terms of technology. It's pretty shocking in terms of just how much kids are being exposed to. So Meta is deep into this landmark legal battle. Just giving you a little background over whether its Instagram and Facebook platforms are designed to be addictive and harmful to teens and younger children, with multiple high-profile trials underway across the U.S. For example, in Nashville, there's a separate trial focusing on Instagram's design, including infinite scroll, autoplay, disappearing content, and notification systems. The AG, Attorney General in Tennessee, alleges Meta prioritized profits over teen safety, potentially violating the Tennessee Consumer Protection Act. And if found liable, Meta could face millions in penalties. Okay, so that's just one state. That's Tennessee. Then we move to this trial that's going on in California. In Oakland, California, there's a coalition of 29 states led by California, Colorado, Kentucky, and New Jersey. Those states' AGs are accusing Meta of intentionally designing addictive features to hook young users, also misleading the public about safety, and illegally collecting children's information under 13. The case, first filed all the way back in 2023, could impose massive penalties and force changes to core platform features such as, again, infinite scrolling, which is a huge problem, algorithm recommendations, and push notifications. California's Deputy Attorney General, Megan O'Neill, describing Meta's strategy as hook the users, hold them for as long as you can, harvest their data, and then hide the truth from the public. All right, so expert testimony is coming in all of these trials. For example, psychological science professor Paul Hunhoff testified that pervasive design features such as the auto-scrolling, the custom explore pages, and constant social comparison can trigger dopamine rewards that make use feel automatic, especially for adolescents developing social identity. And this witness and this whistleblower, we'll have more information on him in a minute, former Meta safety engineer Arturo Bejar, also testifying that he repeatedly warned executives about high rates of harm to teens, including exposure to predatory content. But he said he received no meaningful response. So Meta is denying wrongdoing, arguing there's no clear scientific link between social media use and adolescent harm. I'm not sure how they can say that, given all the studies that are out there showing a connection. And if you talk to any pediatrician, I've had Meg Meeker on many times about this, and she'll be on with us next hour on a different topic, but I mean, she sees it in her office as a practicing pediatrician. So they're denying this, and they're saying social media addiction is not a recognized psychiatric diagnosis. The company's lawyers point to internal studies showing some teens feel worse after using Instagram, framing them as evidence of ongoing efforts to improve the platform. Well, that's kind of like the fox watching the hen house. So what's at stake here? If Meta is found liable in either or both trials, it could be ordered to make significant design changes, pay not just millions, but billions of dollars in penalties, and set a precedent for how social media companies are regulated. industry watchers have compared the case to big tobacco, and I think this is very, very true. I think that's a great analogy. Because if you think about it, how many were hooked into smoking, right? With all the push. If you ever watch any of the old films, which I love to do because I think the character development in the older films from the 40s and the 50s is just fantastic. But all the women and all the men who smoked all the time everywhere. And it was made to look as something so glamorous. And then all the information started to be released by whistleblowers regarding what the tobacco companies knew. They're saying this could also, if they lose this case, the big one in Oakland that's going on right now, it could be the tobacco moment for tech with potential ripple effects across thousands of similar lawsuits nationwide. I'm really glad this is drawing attention to the problems with social media. And I think it's really significant that we're seeing this. And I don't think the trial was timed this way, but I think it's a coincidence that it was happening and started to open up at the time when young people are heading back to school. We see it all the time, and I'm sure you notice it, even when you're just maybe going to the mall or sitting at a restaurant, how all of us, not just children, but have the tendency to be addicted in some way, shape, or form to social media, especially on our phones. Last month, I think it was, or maybe even earlier in June, there was a report that came out regarding the fact that parents, when it comes to dinner time, parents are on their cell phones and on their devices more than their own children. And dinner time is one of the most important times to bond with your children. The Center for Addiction and Substance Abuse, and I mentioned this in my very first book, Noise, which came out 17 years ago. The Center for Addiction and Substance Abuse has said repeatedly in statements in their own studies, if parents could sit down with their children at least twice a week, you think about it, not much, but twice a week, and have a real conversation, real FaceTime, without any interference, everybody put away their phones, and if you still have a landline, let the machine handle it, but actually talk to each other. They said if that could happen, they would see a huge decrease, they believe, in substance abuse. There's such concern about being together alone. Families in the home, they're there together, but kids are scrolling, parents are scrolling, somebody's watching TV, somebody's playing a video game. They're not even eating meals together. They're grabbing their food and going and sitting in front of a television. There's a whole campaign out there for family meals, and it's been ongoing for years. It offers tips, it offers recipes, it offers ways for people, families, to sit around the table and actually communicate. That's how far we've come in terms of getting away from the basics. You know, those meals are a very Eucharistic reminder of the importance of breaking bread together. So we'll see, and I'm interested to hear more from this insider, Arturo Bejar. Didn't have a chance to go into that today, but we'll be watching this trial as we move forward. We'll be right back on a Friday. Stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection. Maria Ruiz Scaperlanda is joining us this morning to talk about the canonization cause for Blessed Stanley Rother. She's a promoter of the canonization cause, and she's also an award-winning Catholic author and journalist. Her books have explored the lives of the saints, missionaries, and other inspiring figures of the faith. She is the author of The Shepherd Who Didn't Run, Blessed Stanley Rother, Martyr from Oklahoma. Maria, thank you so much for joining us. Take us back, because you have covered the lives of the saints and written about many saints. How did you first hear about Blessed Stanley Rother, and what attracted you to his story? Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you for having me here, Teresa. This is wonderful. I'm not from Oklahoma. Yeah. I'm not from Oklahoma, but when we moved here, my kids went to Catholic school, and they came home telling stories about a diocesan priest from here who went to Guatemala with a mission and was martyred there in 1981. And honestly, I credit the Catholic teachers with kind of keeping the story going and using him as a great example, a model for kids and adults on how to live a life dedicated to God way before the cost even began. So that's really where I first heard about him. And I wrote a few articles. I put them in my columns, that kind of thing. But it wasn't until the cost got going that we started doing longer and more straight to the heart kind of avenues to let people know about who this man is.
And so tell us about his journey, because he actually went back to the area where he was martyred, right? Returned to Oklahoma for a few months, but then returned to the area, correct?
Yes. So he is from a farming family, a town called Okarche, Oklahoma, just northwest of Oklahoma City. His life, what he was used to growing up, was centered on faith, the church, and family. They were a very close-knit family, and farming. To this day, his family still farms out there in Okarche. I think for him, it was an idea of being a missionary in a place where Oklahoma already had a mission. It was in Santiago, Atitlan, ministering to the Mayan Zutu Hill in Guatemala. Father Stan was not a MVP or a best person to be sent there. He didn't win any great awards, or he was a simple guy who wanted to serve God. And when he got there, I think God gave him a lot of graces that most people would never even consider a grace. He was allowed to not only become fluent in Spanish, but in the language of Zutu Hill. And he wanted them to be able to hear the gospel in their language and to minister to them speaking one of one. He celebrated Mass in their language just 5 years in. And what makes it remarkable, Teresa, is that he had been sent home from his first seminary because he wasn't doing well with Latin, and everything was in Latin. So for him to get there and to be able to do these two languages, I think it has to be a sign from God, a miracle maybe even. I see it as the grace of, you have this desire, Stanley, and here's what I can give you.
Yeah. So what do you think led to the martyrdom? I know in terms of the facts of the case, you detail this in your work, but he was targeted during their civil war in Guatemala, correct? There was a list, a death list, apparently?
Yes, there was. He, most of his life there, 13 years, was like a parish priest pretty much anywhere except for being in Guatemala until the end of the 70s, as the 1980 came along. They had the violence that had been going on elsewhere finally reached their remote village, and it was a really hard time, violent time, suffering time for the Mayan Indians there. And Father Stan, being their pastor, his activities were always to help them, to teach education and health, and even getting on the ground floor of buying a co-op so that they didn't have to work for someone else, but they could raise their own crops and make a living. And that was considered very subversive. So the church was targeted, and when he and his associate pastor were put on a death list, Father Stan brought him to Oklahoma and had to decide whether he would go back. And it came down to a simple phrase. He said, I promised them I would be there for Holy Week, and that's what I'm going to do. He was murdered just a few months later, July 28th of 1981. And his signature statement And the title of my biography on him comes from a letter he wrote, and it's if it is my destiny that I should give my life here, then so be it. The shepherd cannot run at the first sign of danger.
Wow. And again, as I mentioned to you, the book, the title is so powerful. We are speaking with author and Catholic journalist Maria Ruiz Scaperlanda. We're talking about the canonization cause for Blessed Stanley Rother from Oklahoma. And again, her book is A Shepherd Who Didn't Run, Blessed Stanley Rother, Martyr from Oklahoma. What was the impact after his martyrdom, not only in Guatemala, but back in Oklahoma, Maria?
I think for a long time, people on both sides have known from the beginning that he was a martyr for his faith, a martyr for wanting to be a sign of the love of Christ for the people there, and a very tangible symbol, sign, a living entity of this is how much God loves you. I mean, having a gringo in that kind of environment, he was embraced by them in a very special way that nobody else in the Oklahoma mission ever was really able to accomplish. And I think it's, like I said, I see it as God blessing the desires of his heart. And that's why we have this documentary that will be shown next week in over 1,000 theaters. We want all the avenues that we can get to make his story known. And there's nothing like a good movie that can show us what Okarchi looks like, what Santiago Atitlan looks like, but mostly what the people there say about him. And I think it allows for him to tell his own story in the sense of how people experienced him and knew him and want to remember him. And it's done very beautifully. It's a great documentary, and I hope everyone gets to the theater on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah, it's next week, right? August 25th, 26th, yes. And 27th.
And the 27th one, that day, it will be presented in Spanish. And the 25th and 26th in English. It's narrated by Martin Sheen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
And then the Spanish is narrated by Father Rafael Capel from Miami. I encourage people to go and get to know this man who is not only our first American martyr, but I believe a great example of what we can be living every day. And I think we need saints that are local and contemporary,
yes.
And he certainly is that.
Mm-hmm. Where does his cause for canonization stand? I know that Pope Francis declared him a martyr back in 2016, and then he was beatified in 2017. Where are we in the process right now?
So we need a miracle for him to be canonized. We're at the end. I encourage anyone who has a petition, a special need, and we all have those things that we have in our life for ourselves or other people that we say, well, that will take a miracle. So I encourage all of your listeners to ask for Father Stan's intercession. And that's what it will take, somebody to be the one that we can send to Rome for completing the cause.
So if the documentary does really well next week, Maria, will it stay in the theaters? Can you re-release it? What are the plans? Or just these specifically 3 days that people can go in the theaters next week?
That's a great idea. I mean, a great question, Teresa. It's, I think we will know more as we get closer, but the idea might include extra nights at the theater. The pre-sales are doing very well. Eventually, that is the goal, that it will be in several, not just one, streaming service. like I said, it's a really well done, full-length documentary, and it will help Father Stan's name, I guess, to be put out there. But mostly, I want his story, the story of a man who loved God so much that he would do anything for the people he was serving.
So has he been one of your favorites to cover and about which to write? Because you've done a lot of work on the saints.
Yeah, he's become my main man. This is way beyond a book project at this point. And I was asked this year, just recently, by Archbishop Coakley to take on the office of promoter of his cause, and it's humbling that I get to do both his biography and now this. So I'm very thankful to have him be part of my saint posse. He kind of leads the way.
I love that, your saint posse. Yeah.
Yeah. We all have
also,
one.
Yeah, exactly. There's also a shrine, too, I want to let people know about in Oklahoma City, which is beautiful. The RotherShrine.org is a website, right?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, the shrine has been dedicated and functioning for going on 3 years now. So it's a beautiful, very holy place, and that's where his body is interred, in the small chapel of the shrine. Hey, if you come to Oklahoma City, I'll give you a personal tour of the shrine, Teresa.
Well, I've been to Oklahoma City many times, and only to speak, but way back in the day, and you'll appreciate this as a fellow journalist. It was a while ago, but I was there for the Oklahoma City bombing. I covered that extensively.
Oh, wow, me too.
Yep, I was working for the ABC affiliate at the time, and I went back and went all over Oklahoma, went all over Kansas, and was at the arraignment, by the way, for for the two suspects. But this is a much more positive story, thanks be to God. Blessed Stanley Rother Shrine, of course, RotherShrine, I pronounced it incorrectly, RotherShrine.org. And then also check out the documentary that is 3 days next week. You can go to fathomentertainment.com for more information. We'll be right back. Almost 55 minutes past the hour on a Friday morning. It's August 21st, 2026. Thank you so much for listening to the first hour of EWTN's Catholic Connection on a Friday morning on our Global Catholic Radio Network and Sirius Satellite. Coming up, hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra, we are going to look at the issue of school days. In 2 cents, we are going to share part of one of the videos of a very important new series all about what's happening with gender ideology in schools. It's produced by our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom. And then after our bottom of the hour interview with Dr. Meg Meeker on going back to school, we will hear from one of the attorneys from the wonderful Alliance Defending Freedom organization who's a big part of this series. It's a 5-part video series, Stand Firm in the Truth About Gender, and Kate Anderson is going to be joining us. Now, Meg Meeker will be with us at the bottom of the hour, 28 minutes past the hour, for one segment all about back to school and keeping your kids in the faith, and she has a great background in this. She's a pediatrician, author of multiple books, and she's also the founder of the Strong Parent Project, which is an online learning community to equip and encourage parents. And she is just wonderful. And she's also speaking not just from her own private practice as a pediatrician and the research and the work that she's done, but she's speaking as a mom and a grandmother. And she has great advice. That's coming up in hour number 2 on a Friday. Hope we're having a great Friday, or Fri-yay, as I call it. We'll be right back on EWTN's Radio Extra. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Friday, hour number 2 of Catholic Connection here on EWTN Radio Extra. Appreciate your listenership and hope you appreciate our topics and our guests this morning. We have a great lineup, especially if you are in a family where the children are already in school or heading back to school. We have the one, the only Dr. Meg Meeker joining us at the bottom of the hour. The topic is back to school and staying in the Catholic faith. She's a pediatrician, the author of multiple books, and she's recognized as one of the country's leading authorities on parenting, teens, and children's health. And she's also the founder of the Strong Parent Project, a unique online learning community to equip and encourage parents. So Meg's going to be along with some great advice and insights. And what I love about the way she addresses it, it's not just with her incredible background as a medical professional and as an instructor, and she actually teaches at a medical college as well, but she comes at this from a reality perspective because she's a mom and she's a grandmother. Okay, so what she's expressing is the things that she's already dealt with at home. Her kids are all grown now, and of course she's told me all about her beautiful grandkids, but she speaks from the heart, and she's terrific. So Dr. Meg Meeker on at the bottom of the hour. And then speaking of young people, our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom, Kate Anderson will be joining us. She is going to talk about a powerful 5-part video series entitled Stand Firm in the Truth About Gender. How many of you are concerned, for example, maybe your children are in a public school or in another school that is, and they may even be, Lord help us, because it does happen, and we know this all too well from the Cardinal Newman Society and their research, schools that identify as Catholic but are pushing all kinds of things, including gender ideology. So this series that they've done is very helpful for parents and how to get information, how to learn really about what's going on. And there's a 5-part video series for 2 cents. Before we have Kate on, we're going to actually share a portion of installation number 1. So Kate will join us as we wrap up the program after Meg to talk in more detail about the series, but we'll also play it for you. Now, what I find very, I think, miraculous or God-sentence, how do you ever say that? I always love the word God-sentence. I kind of made it up. Anyway, is that this series is being released at the same time, or pretty close to the same time, as this new eye-opening report was given to us last week regarding what's happening with this gender ideology. And that report came from the Department of Health and Human Services, and it's called Wolves in White Coats. So that will be really important for you if you haven't looked it up yet. It's a 64-page report, and a big chunk of it, and we talked to Bill Donahue about this report last week, or actually earlier this week. A big chunk of that report has testimonies from young people who say they felt like they were sitting in front of a used car salesman pushing this life-altering and mutilating surgery on them as if it were no big deal. And now they're suffering long-term consequences. So we'll discuss with Kate Anderson. And as I mentioned earlier, this program all about children and families. Right now, though, before we give you the news, let's start with the weather. We have severe thunderstorms, according to the National Weather Service, and excessive rainfall that are possible into the evening in the Mid-Atlantic, and heavy rain shifting to Virginia and the Carolinas today. Severe thunderstorms also possible in the Central Plains into the upper Mississippi Valley and the Deep South tonight. And then we have dangerous heat persisting across the Southern Plains and the lower Mississippi Valley. And then the heat will expand in the Southwest. That's a look at the forecast. And, of course, your rundown on a Friday for hour number 2 of Catholic Connection. Right now, let's get started with the news for this hour on EWTN's Radio Extra. While addressing the International Catholic Legislators Network, the Holy Father, Pope Leo, urging legislation protecting human rights and human dignity. Vatican News saying he warned that artificial intelligence must never be allowed to erode the family, which he referred to as the first school of humanity. The Holy Father saying that sound legislation should encourage scientific and technological creativity while safeguarding fundamental human rights and freedoms. It should protect users from exploitation, preserve personal privacy, he said, ensure transparency in the use of emerging technologies, and guarantee they strengthen democratic institutions. At the same time, the Holy Father underscoring the rapid development of artificial intelligence risks, creating new forms of technological dependence with poorer nations increasingly reliant on wealthier ones. And with an increasing number of abortions done by way of sending pills through the U.S. mail, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, as Isabella Di Carvalho tells us, is urging Catholics across the U.S. to pray to St. Joseph to stop the spread of abortion pills.
Inviting Catholics to join a focused effort of prayer and action against the spread of abortion pills, starting on August 18th and lasting until October. Every abortion involves the death of a child and harm to the mother. Now, with easier access to abortion pills, the abortion rate is tragically climbing, along with increased health risks, said Archbishop Paul Coakley, USCCB President, and Bishop Daniel Thomas, Chairman of the conference's Pro-Life Committee, in a joint invitation released on August 18th. The invitation includes a prayer in English and Spanish that can be said for the intercession of St. Joseph, Defender of Life. It also encourages Catholics to visit the USCCB's Respect Life Prayer and Action website, where they can learn about the danger of abortion pills and send messages to pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies that are involved. The initiative was launched in order to overlap with the Respect Life Month, which is observed every October by the Catholic Church in the United States.
Again, more news coming from the Vatican. The bishop, or actually from Lourdes, involving the Holy Father, the bishop who oversees the Shrine of Our Lady of Lourdes in France, saying the popular Catholic pilgrimage site will cover all of its mosaics by disgraced priest Father Marco Rupnik ahead of Pope Leo's visit in September. EWTNnews.com has more on this important story. The Lourdes bishop explaining to local media in France all of the works of the facade of the Basilica of the Rosary will indeed be covered and redecorated out of respect for abuse victims. He also said they will remain covered going forward. EWTN News did confirm the report with the press office of the shrine in Lourdes, but details about how the mosaics are to be covered and when were not yet available. The decision to cover the mosaics comes just over a month before the Holy Father's visit to France, which will include a stop at the popular Marian Shrine in Lourdes. That will happen on September 26th and 27th. Now, the visibility of the mosaics by Rupnik, an accused sexual abuser currently undergoing a Vatican trial, risked becoming the literal backdrop of Leo's Rosary procession and other events at Lourdes. The topic of sexual abuse and care for victims is still likely to come up in the Pope's meeting with the French bishops on the 27th of September, though the Pontiff is not expected to address the status of Rupnik's case. The Vatican also saying the Pope will meet privately with victims of abuse sometime during his France trip, but no other details on that portion of the trip have been released yet. Now, covering all of Rupnik's mosaics and the Lourdes bishop's most dramatic step yet with regard to the artwork by the priest artist. Those mosaics were added to the neo-Gothic facade of the Lower Lourdes Basilica at the end of 2007. Rupnik has been accused of spiritual, psychological, and sexual abuse of religious sisters and was removed from the Jesuits back in 2023. He's currently facing a canonical trial at the Vatican's Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith over allegations he abused dozens of women religious, including some within the context of the creation of his art. In other news this morning, the FBI says a female ISIS supporter was planning to attack New York's Capitol building in Albany. FBI Special Agent Craig Tremaroli says 35-year-old Jessica Bowie wanted to blow up the Capitol and kill lawmakers working inside the building.
She said, quote, "I want to destroy as much of the building as possible and kill the senators while they are meeting. I want them to lose a lot of important documents as well."
Tremaroli also says Bowie praised the September 11th attacks.
Also in the court documents, she told the source that she went from a little girl waving an American flag after 9/11 to now having stickers of the fallen towers. Folks, let that sink in.
She was allegedly discussing her plans with FBI informants and spent weeks surveilling the state capitol. She was arrested yesterday and charged for attempting to provide material support to ISIS. The FBI called her attacks an attack on democracy, her attempts an attack on democracy. Meanwhile, the FBI says Jessica Bowie pledged allegiance to ISIS online before buying those bomb-making materials earlier this month from a hardware store. The FBI again saying she began planning to detonate a bomb at the Capitol in July, discussing her plans with FBI informants and spending weeks taking surveillance photos of the building. Tammy Trujillo tells us a major polling tracker is suspending its use of information from a pollster after discovering evidence the firm allegedly falsified data.
The survey in question from the Public Sentiment Institute was on the candidates in Florida's gubernatorial Republican primary race. This after another shocking announcement from the fake polling center Median Strategies, which admitted to spreading false data as a social experiment. 50+1 announced it was permanently banning data from the firm, which appeared to boost poll numbers of the candidate that paid for the poll. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Testimony resuming today in the Lindsay Clancy murder trial in Massachusetts. On Thursday, defense heard testimony from a Massachusetts hospital chaplain who met with Clancy the day after she killed her 3 young children back in 2023. She said Clancy told her she heard a voice in her head commanding her to harm the children. The jury was dismissed after hearing from the chaplain, with the judge saying that will be a longer day today. An expert on postpartum psychosis will testify for the defense, and prosecutors will call 3 rebuttal witnesses. Closing arguments are expected next week. Natalie Rodriguez tells us an ICE deportation flight originating from Alexandria, Louisiana, with a brief Miami layover, has now officially landed in northern Haiti.
The charter with 161 Haitian nationals arrived in the northern city of Cap-Haïtien, bypassing the capital due to rampant gang warfare following the termination of temporary protected status. Amid an immigration scramble in South Florida, legal defense groups in Little Haiti report that arriving migrants do face heavy gang violence, while local families are facing sudden ICE check-ins and a reported expansion of electronic tracking monitors. Natalie Rodriguez, Miami.
2 fishermen have been rescued, this after they were found floating in a cooler off the coast of Mexico. The Mexican Navy says they found the men Wednesday. They were about 150 miles off the coast, where they had been floating in the Pacific in a large fishing cooler with no food, no water, and for 5 days. The Navy saying they were airlifted to Mexico, where they received medical attention before reuniting with their families. It's not clear, though, how the men became stranded. A video of the rescue shows 2 men in a large blue box bobbing on the ocean waves as the rescue boat moves in. An Arizona State University business professor says data from schools after school sales can also paint a picture on how the shopping for the holidays will turn out. His name is Hitendra Chaturvedi, and he looks at how much retailers will be buying next month.
In September, if the retailers decide to order with energy, enthusiasm, then we are going to see a very good Christmas.
On the other hand, he says if businesses are holding back, that's a different story. The professor noting that prices for gasoline and tariffs have added an extra cost of around $4,500 per household, and that could in turn show an increase in buy now, pay later credit card debts. Finally, in our news segment, Bree Tennis tells us today we celebrate more than 61 million Americans who are over the age of 65.
Today is National Senior Citizens Day, and if that includes you, be ready to flash your ID because there will be deals. Those in the category may not be able to work a smartphone, but they have lived through global transformations. The Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, the space race, and medical breakthroughs, and they did it all without the internet. And if you're under that age group, a little help. Top 2 requests, make the text display bigger and find those missing apps. I'm Bree Tennis.
We'll be right back on a Friday. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning into EWTN's Catholic Connection, hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra. And this time we do a segment called 2 Cents. If you're a new listener, appreciate your listening. And I'd like to just share what's on my heart and what's on my mind regarding what's happening in our world and give it a truly Catholic perspective. I'm excited to have a little bit later on the program the folks from Alliance Defending Freedom on with us to give us more information about this very powerful and important online video series that is available now to help parents and all of us really understand more deeply about the truth about our gender. We are made in the image and likeness of God, male and female. And no matter what someone claims or says or tries to do to their body, that cannot change. It doesn't change your DNA. And as I mentioned, this series is available now. At the same time, this eye-opening and very important report came out last week from the Department of Health and Human Services, all about what's happening with the medical community, and not only what they're doing to young people in terms of these horrible mutilating surgeries, but how much fraud is involved and how much of a big business this whole gender push really is. You learn when you go to J school, follow the money. And yet how interesting is it that the media don't talk about the money in this whole issue of gender, nor do they talk about it in abortion, and both are huge moneymakers. So this particular series is talking about schools, okay, and what's happening in schools and helping parents recognize where this ideology is being pushed so they can stand against it and affirm their children and who they are, made in the image and likeness of God. It's 5 parts, and it's really well done because you have experts who have been handling cases where parents' rights have been violated. You had some school districts, and I believe this is still the case in California, although they may have lost a case recently, where the parents did not have to be notified if their children decided to change their name, identify differently, or somehow start the whole process of, and I'm doing the air quotes here, changing their gender, which again we know is not possible. Now just think about that in the sense of reality. If you have a child in school, what happens if they're sick? What happens if something has to be given to them medication-wise? Aren't they on the phone with you? And yet with something as serious as pushing them toward this life-altering decision, they can keep it a secret. So that's why this series is so crucial, and we'll talk more about it. But I thought I would play a segment of it. Richard's going to roll it for us, where these 2 fine attorneys from Alliance Defending Freedom are kind of giving us an overview and talking about what parents can do to be aware and how they can protect their families. So we're going to play a clip from segment 1, and this is a 5-part series from our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom. Stand firm in the truth about gender. Take a listen.
Hi, I'm Kate Anderson, and I'm an attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom.
And I'm Jonathan Scruggs, also an attorney at Alliance Defending Freedom. And today, Kate and I would like to talk to you about gender ideology in schools. Gender ideology is just the belief system that a boy can become a girl or a girl can become a boy. It's an ideology that believes that your internal sense should trump biological reality. So let me start off and ask you a question, Kate. Where have you seen a gender ideology at work in schools? Because you're not just a lawyer, you're a parent. Lawyers can be parents too, I've heard.
Yes, we can.
So can you just talk about what are some situations where there's become tension at schools involving gender ideology?
We're talking about kids that are too young to even know how to tie their own shoes, are being told that there are more than 2 genders, that they could be born in the wrong body, that the only way to respect and be loving to their neighbor is to fully embrace and celebrate another child or an adult that is engaged in identifying as the opposite sex. We have a case involving overnight accommodations. So a 5th grade girl was arranged to be sharing, she was assigned to share a room, and then it was arranged that she'd be sharing a bed with a 5th grade boy who identified as a girl on the trip. And her parents weren't given notice of it. She didn't know ahead of time. The only reason she found out is this other student, the boy, told her as they were getting ready for bed. And so she had to deal with that in real time, miles away from her dad, and trying to figure out what to do. And this was when she got home and her parents were asking questions. They learned this is school policy. This was done intentionally, and the school has no intention of changing that policy. So even paying attention to how kids are roomed on school trips, anything having to do with privacy for students, all of this gender ideology is running into the policies. It goes far beyond what they're teaching in kindergarten through 12th grade. As a parent, I know you have this experience. We get those long emails. It's hard to figure out what's going on in the classroom, but I cannot stress enough how important back to school nights are, going through those emails, and then just having that relationship with your kids' teachers and asking questions at the school about what they're teaching, what books they're using, what curriculum they're using. And that can give you a lot of information. And then with that information, that's how you can opt your kid out. When you can see they're supposed to read this book that violates my beliefs and how I want to raise them, then you can ask for that opt out.
What are the potential rights that parents have that they may not know about to help protect them from some of these ideologies going on at school?
Well, first and foremost, parents have parental rights that are protected by the Constitution, that for over 100 years, I think I said earlier, and that's true, the courts have said that parents are the ones that have the fundamental right to raise their kids, to direct their upbringing, education, health care, those kinds of things. So you have a constitutional right as parents to make these decisions, and that's being violated when the schools make these choices and don't tell you about them. But you also have a lot of parents with a faith background that this is violating their religious beliefs, and they're being really impeded from being able to raise their kids according to their beliefs, to direct their kids' religious upbringing, because the school is, through curriculum or other policies, undermining those beliefs.
All these rights are in play, and all these rights are protected a lot of times by state statutes, but a lot of times by the U.S. Constitution. These are fundamental rights.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about raising the state statutes, because the federal law and the Constitution is sort of the biggest and maybe in some ways most important protection. But there are a lot of states that have passed really good laws, particularly on the issues of curriculum notice and opt-out, to give parents state statutory rights to see what's going on in their classroom, to be able to ask questions about it and get their kids excused from it. And so being aware of state laws, which sometimes can happen just by being engaged with other parent groups, paying attention to what's going on in your district among parent groups, and what information is being shared, can be an easy way to get information.
So that is Kate Anderson, and she's going to be joining us, as I mentioned, at the end of the program. We'll do a complete segment with her. She starts with us at 39 minutes past the hour. She's senior counsel and director of the Center for Parental Rights. You can see how, or actually hear, how well informed she is on this topic. So if you go to the ADF website, which is adflegal.org, there you can find more information about this series. And again, it's several parts, and they cover a lot of different topics. Of course, they have a lot, as you just heard, regarding what's happening in schools. But they also talk about the issue of, and they kind of covered it generally, did like a whole smorgasbord this morning that we just played for you in that brief segment. But here's what they do. They talk about gender ideology and free speech, as they mentioned. They also talk about gender ideology and religious freedom, gender ideology and medical ethics, which is a really huge topic, right? Gender ideology and women's sports, and gender ideology and schools specifically. So these were released about a week ago, and these are all available through Alliance Defending Freedom. And what's great about these videos is they're very quick. I don't think there's anyone that's over 6 minutes. Let's see, 5:47, 5:54, 5:54, and then the one we played for you, we played almost the whole video, but it's about 6 minutes. So again, you can sit down, you can listen to these experts, and they will help you navigate this very difficult road that is just full of all kinds of landmines in terms of your concerns about your children, but also what is being done to your rights, your religious freedom rights, your rights as a parent. And how did it get to this point? This is what I think is so compelling, that we can never let our guard down. And that's why organizations such as Alliance Defending Freedom are so important. So we'll talk in more detail with Kate Anderson at 39 minutes past the hour. But speaking of parents, we've got the expert coming up, Meg Meeker. Dr. Meg Meeker joins us. So excited to have her back on the program. Always great to catch up with Dr. Meg Meeker. She's a fellow Michigander, and she is an expert on all things parents, parenting, pediatrician, the author of multiple books, and widely recognized as one of the country's leading authorities on parenting, teens, and children's health. Also the founder of an amazing project called the Strong Parent Project, a unique online learning community to equip and encourage parents. And Meg joining us today to talk about back to school. It's that time of year. And Meg, you told me during the break that you now have 9 amazing grandchildren. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Well, and for good or bad, we're very much involved in all of the kids' lives, which is wonderful. I mean, we have 3 that literally live right next door to us, and another 5 that are, within 2 hours. It's wonderful, but you know what? It takes more energy than writing books. It is exhausting.
Don't you think sometimes, both of us love the Lord so much, and sometimes when I'm taking care of the grandnieces, by the way, the twins are going to be 10, if you can believe that.
Oh, wow.
And the baby's going to be, well, she's just turned 5. And sometimes I'm like, okay, Lord, I think you got it backwards. You should have given us all that energy and just had the kids relax a little bit more. Don't you think so?
And not yell and scream.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. But it's such a blessing. I mean, it's such a blessing, and we're so fortunate to be able to see our kids so much. But it's been busy for sure.
And that's what I love about your perspective, because you not only have the degrees, the titles, and the experience as a pediatrician, but you come at this as a mom and as a grandmother, so you know what families are dealing with. So what's on the minds, do you think, right now of parents getting their kids ready? Some kids are back in school already, but others are not. Kind of walk us through what kind of advice you'd give folks right now.
Sure. It's interesting because I've been talking to my daughters about their kids going back to school. I think the one most important thing to do right off the bat is the week before school, the first 2 weeks of going back to school, make sure your kids go to bed at the same time. Because if you have a tired kid, and most kids aren't going to bed at a regular time during the summer, life is miserable for you and for them. So make sure you get them on a reasonable schedule. The other thing, too, is kids are sort of used to living with a free-for-all. I can do whatever I want. I don't need to pay attention to anybody, listen to anybody. So you really need to kind of rein that in, because that's pretty tough for teachers. When kids come in and they're tired and they're unruly. The other thing that I've heard parents express is, what if my kids get the wrong teacher? What if I don't like the teacher? What if my child has a bully in the class? What do I do with that? So those are the kinds of things I think that sort of get parents going right before school starts.
And I'm sure the other issue, too, from a faith perspective, is parents, if their kids are not going to, let's say, to a Catholic or another Christian school, might be concerned about what they're going to be facing. In the next segment, we're going to be talking with Alliance Defending Freedom about some videos they've done about gender ideology. What's the best way to protect your kids, shore up your kids in the faith, especially before they head back to school again, do you think?
It's tricky, but it is very, very important. And this is what I've done with our grandkids. As I said, first of all, I listen very carefully to what they say is going on at school. I will toss out questions. Do you have anybody in your class who is a girl but would like to be a boy? And they kind of go, what are you talking about? So you need to know what's going on in the classroom. Just toss out a very simple question so you know what they're getting taught. Second of all, if you find that this is coming up and the teacher's talking about boys wanting to be girls and so forth, I say, you know what? This is complicated. And kids who are boys that want to be girls or girls who want to be boys are hurting in a lot of ways. And we believe that if kids want to be that, they need to just wait, but we need to be kind and love them anyway, period. Because it's really hard not to kind of go at it, because it's child abuse. For me, I believe that transitioning kids is child abuse.
Totally.
But you obviously, you don't want to say that to your kids. But this is going to be there. Just like kids are different in all sorts of ways. There's some kids that want to, transition, but that's not something we do, and we pray for them.
Yeah. And, it's very frightening, because I'm sure as a pediatrician, you're aware of the report that the Health and Human Services Department just put out called Wolves in White Coats. And I think it's even worse than we even thought. And you've been on top of this issue for many, many years. And in addition to, the child abuse and the so-called transitioning of these kids, when the young people try to detransition, they're abandoned. So the whole thing is such a mess. And it's so scary for parents right now, Meg.
It's very scary for parents, and that's why parents really need to stand their ground. If your 14, 13-year-old comes home and says, Mom, I just have all these, I have all these feelings of wanting to be a girl, and I'm a boy, and I'm made fun of. I really think this is something I wouldn't want to do. Would you take me to the doctor? Do not take that child to a gender affirming, a gender transitioning clinic at all. Because what happens in these is kids get dumped into the system and they can't get out.
Right.
Doctors are not going to say, well, I don't think it's a good idea for you. They have you on a path. It's a money-making scheme, and they just sort of let it rip. So if that happens, tell your kids, I understand a lot of these feelings are normal, but we're just going to wait a while, because all boys are different. And I just feel very strongly that parents, you don't want to overly criticize and let your kids hear you saying that their parents are stupid or this is wrong. You can feel that way, but the problem is if your child goes into school and they're in 5th grade and they go up to their friend who's transitioning and say, my parents said that your parents are wrong and this is not okay. That's the kid that's probably going to get kicked out of school, not the, a transitioning one that wants to be called a different name. So
yeah. The other issue, and we'd love to have you back on to talk about this because this trial is ongoing and it's one of several, and I mentioned it earlier today. The situation with Meta, I immediately thought of you when I'm reading their response, Zuckerberg's response, saying, it's not true that there's a connection between social media and addiction in kids. I'm like, are you kidding me? You and I have been talking about this for decades.
Yes. What world do they live in? We shouldn't be surprised because truly people like Zuckerberg live in a different world. They don't live in the world that 99% of your listeners and you and I are living in. They don't deal with these subjects. Heck, if he has kids, they're probably not allowed to get on Facebook or the internet. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Because all these people that have all of this technology keep their kids away from it. It's very all of this stuff is addictive. And I think one of the things that I did with our granddaughter now, who's 13, is I've sat down and talked through with her about Instagram. Not saying, because my parents just don't trust me. I said, it has nothing to do with trust, honey. I said, as you walk around, watch adults. How many are on their phones all the time? And how many are looking at this? And do you think that's good for them? And she gets it. If you sit down and talk with your kids, they really get it.
It's interesting. The twins' maternal grandmother is a retired teacher, and she runs out of a part-time tutoring school, and she talks to parents about this, about media and whatnot. And the parents say, they're fine. We just stick them in front of the TV, and they can learn about English and their reading, and we just let them watch television, and that really helps them. It's just amazing how many people let this go. Meg, unfortunately, we're out of time. Great website, meekparenting.com, and we're going to have Dr. Meg back on very soon, because she is so great at empowering parents and all of us to raise strong children. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection. If you feel overwhelmed as a parent or someone who works with young people, or if you just feel like, the world has just gone crazy, well, ADF, our friends at ADF to the Rescue, Alliance Defending Freedom, has released a beautiful and very, very important 5-part video series, Stand Firm in the Truth About Gender. And so blessed to have Kate Anderson with us from Alliance Defending Freedom. This is a really good series. I've been looking at it. I know it's very recent and so important, and really appreciate your work as a senior counsel and director for the Center of Parental Rights. Kate, thanks for joining us. What led to the development of this 5-part series? Was there a particular case on which you were working, or was just the overall expanding issue of gender ideology, which has just gone crazy in the last couple of years? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was probably both. We've been working on this issue for quite a long time, but this is also in the heat of the debate about women's sports and at the Supreme Court. So the country was talking about it in a particular way. And we wanted to do this series on gender ideology because we wanted to empower and equip people to talk about the issue, to understand it and what's at stake. This is an ideology that is entirely counter to the church's teaching on what it means to be human on the way that God made us in his image and likeness, and that our identity is in Christ, not our bodies. It's a fully different worldview, and we're seeing it at odds with Christian thought, and it's hurting people. It's hurting the people that it purports to be helping, even, as you can see in some of the medical malpractice cases going on around the country. So we just wanted to speak into how gender ideology is affecting different areas of our lives in our culture, and equip people to be able to understand it and talk about it.
What I like about them, and I think this is important, that you respect the time, because people, especially parents, are very busy. So none of these is longer really than 6 minutes, which is a good bite of time that people can sit and watch it on their phones, or, maybe on their office break or at home quickly. I mean, in terms of the actual topics, how did you decide what topics? Because I'm sure you could do something endless on this issue.
We were trying to hit the places that we see it playing out most in our society. So we have one on free speech, one on schools and what's going on with parental rights and in schools on gender ideology, one on women's sports, one about medical ethics, and one about religious freedom, how it's impacting the church and people of faith and their ability to live and work according to their faith. And we did try to keep them short. I'm a busy mom too, so we understand that it's easier to get this information if you can get it sort of in a snapshot.
So housekeeping-wise, where can we find the videos quickly? Where can people get them?
On ADF's YouTube channel, and I'm sure we can provide the link for the show.
Yeah, adflegal.org is your main website for people who want general information to see your great work. But yeah, you can find it on YouTube. They're really well done, and I'm so glad you've done this because, again, it makes it so easy for parents to sit down and kind of understand what's going on. In your experience with ADF, were you surprised, we were talking about this during the break, about how quickly this issue just seemed to just take over everything in our culture?
It really has, and it's been surprising to see how fast it spread and how much it's been embraced by people who are advocating for this ideology. And the idea that's behind gender ideology are just so destructive, and it's leading to people not being free to speak. It's leading to kids as little as kindergarten in their classroom being told that there are more than two genders, that being confused by who they are and where their identity lies. We're seeing it play out in a big way in the women's sports context, where women are losing opportunities, and now it's bridging into safety and privacy issues. And then certainly the medical ethics concerns with it, the impact it's having on the church and religious schools that are being pushed to try to embrace some of this ideology. It's just spread so quickly through so many areas of life. And I don't really know why that is, but it is a call for all of us to not ignore it and to really step into this moment and try to love people well and explain why this is a problem.
Did you get a chance to look at the report that came out this month regarding the whole gender ideology, more from a medical and a fraud perspective from the federal government? It's entitled, just in case our listeners haven't heard about it yet, it's entitled Wolves in White Coats, and it was released by the Health and Human Services Department. What was shocking to me, even though I've been covering this issue for years, along with what you're doing, of course, at the Alliance Defending Freedom, is I thought it was mainly going to be a document, research, a report about what's happening to children physically, psychologically, emotionally, and how, it really is child abuse, because they had so many powerful testimonies in that report. But the other thing, Kate, is that the fraud and the abuse within the medical system in terms of how they're taking advantage of taxpayers. It shows you, for example, with the abortion issue, which I know you have dealt with so much at Alliance Defending Freedom as well, how you have to trace the money. It's a huge profit maker. And I don't think a lot of people who may feel that they're being sympathetic understand what's going on here. What do you think?
I think that's very true. And it's great to see our government coming out with these kinds of reports. And there's been others even before that talking about the dangers as you were referencing to individuals who are being pressed into transition, to medically and surgically transition, and how much lifelong damage that causes to people. We're seeing, I mentioned the medical malpractice cases, but we're seeing some cases pop up around the country trying to press back on this because young people are being told that they should start taking these very dangerous prescription drugs to stop puberty, to try to transition and take opposite sex hormones. And once you start on that path, it has significant consequences for your body. lifelong consequences. And so you have these people stepping up in their 20s saying, I didn't know what I was agreeing to. My parents didn't know what they were agreeing to. I have these lifelong injuries and pain and problems that I had no idea because I wasn't properly counseled. This didn't do what they said they would do, all of that. And then you have on top of that to follow the money trail and the fraud that's going on in the system to candidly make money off of it. So one thing I always want people to understand, and the thing that kind of hit me hardest, I think, is the idea that the people that are this ideology is purporting to help are some of the biggest victims of it. These are people who are being really injured by an ideology that says it's trying to serve them, and you have people making money and profit off of it.
Yeah, and many of these victims, they're telling their story about trying to detransition. And there are some places, for example, there's now a place in Texas, but it's so difficult for them that when they want to go against what they did and they realize that they've ruined their lives and they try to get help, they really have to struggle to find that help. It's just so sad. It's like they're trapped because the culture does not want them going back because it will reveal the evils of this whole thing.
Right. And some of these people are young, 16, 17, even younger when they're being pushed into this. They and their parents have no idea what they're choosing. And they're being pressured by doctors to say that there's going to be these other consequences. They have to do this to basically save this child's life. And it's just not true. And I do think that in the coming years, there's going to be a need for the church and people of faith to step in and really serve and care for people who have been victims of this ideology.
We are talking with Kate Anderson. She's been a guest on this program before, thanks to her great work at the Alliance for Alliance Defending Freedom. She's a senior counsel and director of the Center for Parental Rights. You know what's interesting, Kate, and I know you're very familiar with this, is in parts of Europe, other parts of the world, they put the brakes on this. And yet here in the United States, we just, it's like, damn the torpedoes, pardon my French, full speed ahead, right?
Yes, this came to us, some that started in Europe, and now Europe is pulling many reports out and saying that these transition medications, these surgeries are not doing what they thought they would do, and that there are so many side effects and consequences that are really damaging and dangerous. And so they're starting to put the brakes on pushing people to transition because they're seeing the harm that's being done, and that none of the good that they thought was going to be done or purported would be done, I don't know if they ever actually thought it would be done, but that they told people would be done, isn't happening. And so the United States needs to catch up on that. And some of the reports, like we saw from HHS, will help us catch up, but we need to catch up.
The 5-part series of which we're speaking this morning, Stand Firm in the Truth About Gender. For whom did you produce this? Obviously, it's for parents, but how would you like this to be applied?
Well, we wanted this to go to a general audience of people who want to learn more about these issues and really encourage people to become informed and then be able to talk about this issue with their friends and family and feel comfortable with that. This is a topic that is really challenging in our culture because we want to respect the dignity and support people who are struggling, but we also need to recognize that this ideology is harmful for them and it's harmful for other people. We're seeing girls being damaged in their sports because of this ideology. We're seeing Catholic schools being pressured to adopt this ideology and then discriminated against in their states because of it. We're seeing people who aren't able to speak freely or being pushed to try to adopt this ideology with what they're saying, affirming pronouns, and then getting in trouble with their places of work or with the government because of that. And free speech is important. Religious freedom is important. Girls are important. And we need to be protecting those areas and ensuring that we can continue to speak and live the truth that our identity is in Christ, that God made us beautifully and wonderfully in his image, and really spread that.
I think it's really, really powerful in terms of having these videos available because sometimes I'm sure parents and others feel like they're alone, right?
Yes, it's easy to feel alone, but you're not. This is something that I think a lot of our society is concerned about. I think you're seeing that pop up most with the parental rights movement that we're seeing come. parents really standing up and saying, I want to be the one to talk to my kids about these issues. I don't want you to force them to use pronouns. I don't want you to secretly transition them at school, which is also happening. We have a number of cases going on around the country that we're involved in and others are involved in, where the school is actually pushing a child to adopt a identity consistent with the opposite sex and then hide it from their parents. And that's so dangerous. So I think you're seeing parents sort of across the aisle start speaking about this issue because it's coming up in that context, affecting their kids. But this is something that everyone should be concerned about.
Do you think with the recent stories about the WNBA, for example, the fact that they had to have a meeting to try to define what a woman is and they couldn't come up with it, and the fact that you had two retired NBA players who were saying that, I want officially applying for the draft for the WNBA, saying I want to, I identify sometimes as a woman and I want to play, trying to force them, which I thought was a brilliant move. Some people say, oh, it was political, well, whatever, but it forces the reality of the situation. If you're the WNBA, why can't you decide what a woman is? And they don't want to back themselves into a corner, which to me speaks volumes about the reality of the situation. Do you think those kinds of stories help people realize how crazy this is?
I hope so. And I think it highlights how scared people are to talk about this issue. And we're talking about just stating biological reality that men and women are different. There are two sexes, two genders, and people are afraid to say it. And that's why that was one of the reasons we wanted to bring about this series, because we want people to feel comfortable and equipped with information so that they can speak into this. They're not afraid to state the truth on this topic.
Will you be doing more in addition to this series?
This series is our first start. We do things all the time to try to speak into the culture and equip people with information. And so there's always new things coming out on our website. This is meant to be somewhat of a standalone gender series, but I'm sure there will be more to come as there are issues that pop up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could probably do endless reports and series on this one, considering all the cases you're covering and the developments that are happening. Kate, thank you so much for your great work in general at Alliance Defending Freedom, but also for this crucial series. It's a 5-part video series available through Alliance Defending Freedom, adflegal.org. It's on their YouTube page. Stand firm in the truth about gender. We'll be right back. Wishing you a beautiful weekend. My goodness, August 21st already. Time flies. Especially when you have great guests. Hope you enjoyed the program today. Trying to give you a lot of information from the experts out there. And thanks be to God, there are so many from which we may choose. Dr. Meg Meeker, great to have her back on the program. And of course, Kate Anderson from Alliance Defending Freedom. What a great resource for people, this video series. You can check it out again at Alliance Defending Freedom. That's our website. And then just go to, you can actually just Google, it's very easy. Just Google Alliance Defending Freedom. And the title, let me give you that title again, go back to my notes here, of the series is Stand Firm in the Truth About Gender. Even if you put that in a Google search, Stand Firm, the Truth About Gender, and then put ADF, plus ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, it'll pop up. It's very easy to find. But this is something that you can share with other parents. And you can even send it to them, send them the link for these different segments without getting into a discussion or an argument, because I think a lot of people don't know because of how the secular media have bought into this whole thing and the language, which is already in the AP style book, by the way. Did you know that? All the terminology from the abortion industry, from those pushing gender ideology, has long been accepted. The AP style book is kind of like the editing Bible. It's in all the newsrooms. It's what they use for titles and for explanations. And they bought into it hook, line, and sinker. So this is very informative. Monday morning, Matt Swaim, Journey Home Highlights. And we're also going to check in with our friends at Catholic Outreach. And we'll also have our scripture verse of the week. Have a great weekend. God bless you. Talk to you Monday. Ciao, ciao.